What I've come to learn is that life is difficult. And the irony is that when you accept that life is difficult and life isn't meant to be this bed of roses, then at that exact moment, life ceases to be difficult. And that's because we let go of all of our resistance to what is, and most certainly what is out of our control. Over the Christmas period, I was invited to play golf with my brother and my dad and a few other people, and I don't particularly like the game of golf. And because I don't like it, I don't play it, and so therefore that's a vicious cycle, because if you don't play it enough, you're not good, and then you don't enjoy it because you're not good. But I went into that golf game with zero expectations. In fact, my expectations were that this is going to be quite painful and it's not going to be too fun. But they weren't negative expectations. I wasn't focused on how bad it was going to be. I was like, okay, well, let me just go and enjoy my walk, and if I happen to hit a few balls along the way, well, that's what some people call golf. And actually I enjoyed it, and I didn't play too badly compared to my expectation. Then afterwards we played, or the next day or so, we played some paddle, and because I played tennis, it was closer to my sort of area of competence, and so my expectations on my own performance were different, and as a result, I think the experience that we have, or the quality of the experience that we have in life, is the difference between what happens and what we expected to happen. And so when we start to let go of our expectations about life, about how life should be, how people should be, how people should behave, what should show up, when we start to let go of more and more of those expectations, then what are we doing? We're letting go of the resistance. And when we let go of the resistance, the quality of our life improves. And so I'll say it again, as a very profound statement that I heard the other day, and I've reflected quite a lot on it, is that life is difficult. But when you accept that, then life ceases to be difficult. I think there's so much narrative in our society today about that creates the perception and the expectation that life should be wonderful. Often in the spiritual world, there's a lot of narrative about bliss and joy, and life should be peaceful and amazing, and if it's not, there's something wrong. And I really don't think this is helpful. I think it sets people up for failure, because most people then compare their life to this false ideal. And of course, then when it doesn't match that, okay, again, the difference between what is and the expectation that life should be this bed of roses, should be blissful. Your relationship, if it's a good relationship, should be just fantastic. You should communicate beautifully. You should be in love, all the Hollywood romance. Your work should be something you love every day, and we're told that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and all of these sort of things are really, really unhelpful. Life's not meant to be a bed of roses. Life is meant to help you grow. Now, that doesn't mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not jaded. I'm not offering a jaded perspective on life here and saying, oh, well, lower your expectations. I'm saying let go of your expectations. Stop trying to make life what you think it needs to be, and start experiencing life for what it is. And when we do that, we start to see the divine and the magical in every situation. I've even started to get to a point through practicing this where even in the midst of incredibly worldly challenges, Challenges that just maybe a year or two ago, even as recently as that, would have really caused me to spin down into a spiral of fear and anxiety. And yet I've managed to stay pretty surrendered to life, pretty open to, all right, well, let's see what life is all about. Now, and I want to say again, and I've said this several times in other videos, surrender is not about inaction. Surrender is not about throwing your arms in the air and saying, okay, well, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. That's called giving up. Surrender is do what needs to be done. But make sure that what you're doing it from the right state. Another way to think about that is make sure that what you're doing is motivated by the right reasons. If what you're doing is motivated by fear and a mindset of lack and limitation and lack of faith, then the very act of doing what you're doing is just going to create more evidence of what you don't want. But if the actions are motivated by a mindset of faith, a mindset of a state of enthusiasm. I love that word because I'm all about simplicity. And one of my principles is follow your enthusiasm. Because enthusiasm comes from the Greek word which means the God within, entheos. I might be pronouncing it wrong. The God within, which means inspiration. So where are you really enthusiastic? See how much you can keep yourself staying in that state of enthusiasm. Because that's where we connected to that inspired flow. And so if your actions are coming out of a state of enthusiasm, a state of expansiveness, a state of faith, then those actions are working with life, not against life. So in summary, I really think that there's too much narrative about how life should be this bed of roses, how your work should be just blissful and amazing, how your relationships should just be peaceful and loving all the time. And I think this is not what life is all about. I think it sets us up for failure. And I think when we start to let go of these false ideals, we give ourselves the chance to see the magical, see the beauty in even the toughest moments through our life. We start to see that even conflict in relationships creates something beautiful if it's coming from the right place. That challenges in your work, in your career, help you grow or help you shift into a different path. That challenges in life help you evolve and elevate in your level of awareness and consciousness. So stop expecting life to be what you think it needs to be. And there's great peace to be found in just allowing life to show up in whatever way it shows up. Because remember that other than your own state, other than your own thoughts, feelings, and actions, there's nothing else that we have control over. So stop trying to control the things that we can't control. Like I say, I'm not preaching here. These are things that I'm actively practicing, and I've seen in my own experience the results of what I'm saying. And I'm also not saying that I get it right all the time. I do have times where the fear starts to threaten me, but in certain situations, but more and more I'm learning and I'm training myself to just let go of that fear and realize that life is actually working with us, not against us. If we allow ourselves or we have the courage to stay in that state of faith and that state of enthusiasm, it takes courage, because the mind tells us all sorts of stories about how when we're facing a challenge, how bad it could be and how bad it might be and what could happen. And if you can just start recognizing those are just stories, and focus your attention on coming back into the state of faith and enthusiasm, and letting go, surrendering control of the outcome, then life can flow through you. So I hope that was helpful, and sometimes we just need to be reminded of the things that we already know. So you might be working with these principles already, but it's helpful to keep remembering them, to keep being reminded of them. So if you've liked this video and you enjoy the things that I'm sharing, please subscribe. It really helps and encourages me to keep sharing openly, honestly, authentically, and to be vulnerable about where I'm struggling, and so that you can relate much stronger to what I'm sharing.